Shalom, shalom, mishpacha. Welcome to another weekly Torah Portion. And this week we are going to cover the Torah Portion, Parashat Beshalach. In English, it means Torah Portion when he sent. Beshalach means when he sent. It will cover Exodus chapter 13, verse 17, up until chapter 17, verse 16. Now, I'm going to jump through some of the verses and explain the significance for us today as Torah observant believers, especially believers in HaMashiach and those who are waking up to their true identity as the true children of Yashar'al, as the true descendants of Yaakov. So every week we cover a Torah portion and it helps us learn more and more about the Torah. And this week what we are covering is in Beshalach. It talks about when the children of Yashar'al are released from Egypt, from Mitzrayim, and the parting of the Red Sea, of course. And then it also covers the manna from Shomayim and the splitting of the rock when the water came out, as well as the battle against the Amalekites. So mostly in those passages we'll speak about the significance it has for us today, and then in some of the passages we're going to discuss the Hebraic context and some of the hidden meanings and the hidden, revelations that are only found in the Hebrew when you look at it in the Hebrew. So without further delay, guys, let us get started. The first verse we are going to read is chapter 13, verse 17. And it reads as follows. And it came to be, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that Elohim did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, though that was nearer. For Elohim said, lest the people regret when they see fighting and return to Mitzrayim. Verse 18. So Elohim led the people around by the way of the wilderness of the Sea of Reeds, and the children of Yashar'al went up in fives. Some versions read in marching formation from the land of Mitzrayim. Verse 19. And Mashah took the bones of Yosef with him, for he certainly made the children of Yashar'al swear, saying, Elohim shall certainly visit you, and you shall bring my bones from here with you. And they departed from Succoth and camped in Etham at the edge of the wilderness. Now, immediately what we see here is that the Most High took them the long way around. Now, it is general speculation that Mashah most likely knew the way to, the wilderness or to the mountain of Sinai, where they were supposed to go. However, he had to trust in the Most High. So obviously that speaks to us today, is that even though we know the way, we need to trust in Him and to trust in His plan, even if it seems like He's taking us the long way around, even if it seems like it is taking more time than what we expect. Because how many of us know that our perfect timing is not His perfect timing? He might be working on us. He might be showing us certain things that we need to learn in order for us to be ready to serve Him, because we need to be a worthy people that are able to serve Him. He cannot accept a people that are still in covenant with the worldly system, in covenant with Mitzrayim or Egypt, and have those people serve Him. No, He needs a people that will be washed by the waters, people that would be cleansed in their hearts, people that would completely abandon the ways of the world. Because as it says in the Parashat that friendship with the world is enmity with Adonai. So we see that in the first few generations of the children of Yashar'al, they had to be cleansed. They had to be completely taken out of the worldly system. Now, in verse 19, when it says, Moshe took the bones of Yosef with him. So we all know that Yosef, or Joseph, is a type of Messiah in that he was very much like his father. He was close to his father. He helped the children of Israel from the famine. He saved them from the famine. So whenever we see the word Messiah, it's Mashiach in Hebrew, which simply means the anointed one, So many kings were anointed. Even Mashiach, as a prophet, he was anointed. He was Mashiach in a sense. So we see the type of Messiah in Ben Yosef. The significance here is that when we see them take his bones, it's almost as if they are taking his essence, the essence of Messiah, the essence of Ben Yosef, of the chosen son, the special chosen son. So even us today, we take the essence of the chosen son who was taken out from the tomb, taken out from the place of death, just like Ben Yosef or Yosef himself. He was taken out of the tomb. He was taken out of the place of death. And his example is an example for us today on how we should live our lives, just like it was in the days of Yahushua HaMashiach. Continue on to verse 21, it says, And Adonai went before them by day in a column of cloud to lead the way, and by night in a column of fire to give them light, so as to go day and night. The column of cloud did not cease by day, nor the column of fire by night before the people. Now, immediately this makes me think of the baptism. Yochanan, the immerser, said, I immerse you in water, but one that is greater than me is coming, who will immerse you in water, in the spirit, and in the fire. So it was almost like a picture of how the Mashiach is going to deal with us, in that he's going to baptize us in the Ruach and in the fire. Now, the reason why I say the pillar of cloud is like a baptism as much as the waters of the Red Sea or the Sea of Reeds is that in the Hebrew, the word Mayim means water, and Shem Mayim is heaven. So literally in the Hebrew, when you say Shem Mayim, you are saying, which is the word for heaven, you are saying sky waters. Now, when the sky waters were in their presence, like in the form of a cloud, because the cloud contains water, it was like they were being immersed, they were being baptized by the presence of the Most High, by the presence of Adonai. So even with the fire, it's almost as if, they were being immersed with the consuming presence of the Most High, because in the Parashat, it says his presence is like a consuming fire, right? And we know that when we take on this Hebrew roots faith, or when we become followers of the way, every aspect of our life needs to be consumed by the fire of his presence, just like it was with the children of Yashar'al, that day and night we need to be consumed by his presence. In the book of Yahusha or Joshua, it says, the words of this law shall not depart from your mouth. You shall meditate on them day and night. So during the day, we immerse ourselves in the waters of heaven, the Shemayim, right? Which is the form of a cloud. And by night, we need to be consumed by his fire, which consumes everything else in our lives. And we are able to focus on him and his purpose for our lives. Because we do not own ourselves. We are not here for our own pleasure alone, but we are here for whatever assignments that he has set before us. Now, in chapter 14, from verse 7 till 11, is speaking about how Pharaoh was sending his chariots to pursue. They now regretting that they had let the children of Israel go, and now they decide to pursue them because they are so puffed up in their pride. Pharaoh and the Egyptians think that man is Al-Hayim, and they don't understand that Al-Hayim is above man and above even the Shamayim, right? So they, even after all these miracles and everything and signs and wonders, they still believe that they're the ones in charge, and they're about to face, their final judgment. In 14 Exodus, right? 14 verse 11, it reads, "And they said to Masha, 'Did you take us away to die in the wilderness because there were no burial sites in Mizraim? What is it that you have done to us to bring us up out of Mizraim?'" Verse 12, "Is it not the word that we spoke to you in Mizraim, saying, 'Leave us alone and let us serve the Egyptians, the Mitzrayites? For it would have been better for us to serve the Mitzrayites than to die in the wilderness.'" So this clearly shows us that when Abba, Adonai, the Most High, delivers us from our, depravity of, this world and not knowing Him, we still crave to go back to slavery because it is what we are familiar with, and not only slavery and the worldly system, but even religion, It's like we avoid this responsibility of following Torah and, being responsible and actually growing and taking that challenge, taking this hard step. Because one of the biggest deceptions that we fell for in Christianity or Christianity is that we were convinced that it has to be easy and it has to feel good all the time. But when we actually analyze it, is that in real life, nothing that is good comes easy. Whether you have to study in university, whether you have to learn a new skill, whatever it is that you have to do, even raising a child is not easy. Giving birth is not easy. Nothing that is good comes easy. But somehow in the false religious systems, we are convinced that it is easy and it's going to be a smooth transition. But we actually see here that the children of Yashar'al would have rather gone back to slavery. They would have rather gone back to the false system than to continue further and to fully trust, fully have imunah, right, in Abba Yahuwah, in Adonai. So it is for us to reflect and to look at ourselves and to question ourselves, to ask, are we really willing to go on to this journey, to this calling that He is giving us? Or are we still in doubt? Do we still want to always go back to the false religious system and that way of life and those false doctrines, all these Pauline doctrines that convince us that, hey, it can be easy, it can be not so difficult, and it can be a smooth transition. Whereas when we look at scripture, actually, most of the time when there was, a major shift, a major change, things became a little bit difficult to the point where people wanted to go back to their old life. Verse 13, it reads, "And Masha said to the people, 'Do not be afraid. Stand still and see the deliverance of Adonai, which He does for you today. For the Mizrayites whom you see today, you are never to see again.'" Now, in verse 13, the word for deliverance or salvation there, in the Hebrew, or if you check the concordance in the Strongs, it is the word Yahusha or Yeshua, depending on the pronunciation, right? Which means salvation. Now we know that the Messiah's name was Yahushua. So, obviously, he's telling us that stand still and see the Yahusha of Adonai, which He does for you today. So He will deliver us. He has always been the one to deliver us, to send His messengers, to send His prophets, to send the Hamashiach, to deliver us from the false worldly system. Verse 14, "For Adonai does fight for you, and you keep silent. He's the one who fights for us." Now listen to verse 15, it reads, "And Adonai said to Masha, Why do you cry to me? Speak to the children of Yashar'al and let them go forward. The Most High is telling Masha that now is not the time for prayer. Now is not time for you to cry to me. Now it is time for you to take action. It is time for these people to take action. You know, in the false system of Christianity, whenever a believer goes through trouble and trials, all they ever get is, phrases like, oh, we'll pray for you. Oh, we'll keep you in our prayers. We'll keep you in our hearts. Oh, come to the assembly, come to the assembly. And it's not a practical way. This is what I love about the Torah. The Torah gives us a practical way on how to live our lives. It tells us that you must give your first fruits. It tells us that you must leave the cleanings to the poor. It tells us that you must give to your neighbor. It tells us that you must not charge interest to a fellow Yerushalayim. These are very practical steps on how to live our everyday lives and how to help our fellow neighbor. Yahusha said, the most important commandment is love al-Hayyim and love your neighbor. Upon these two, all the Torah hangs, right? So basically, that's just an index of the whole Torah. How do you love Adonai al-Hayyim? By following the hukim or hukot, mystery laws, right? The ones that you and I don't necessarily understand, but we have to follow by faith. And how do we love our neighbor? By following the mishpatim laws, the civil laws, the laws that tell you how to treat your neighbor and even the sojourner and the stranger around you. Continuing on chapter 14, verse 16, it reads, "And you lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, and let the children of Yashar'al go on dry ground through the midst of the sea." Now, this was obviously a great miracle. The Most High, we read about it from verse 16 till roughly 25, around there, when he had performed this great miracle of parting the sea so that they may walk on dry ground. And then, the Egyptians pursued them because of their arrogance. And, they were ultimately judged for their insolence. But it also reminds us that whenever we go through a new phase, in our spiritual walk, the Most High will make a way. Obviously, He will make a way for us, but we need to trust Him. Some commentators, they speculate that the parting of the sea didn't immediately happen and then they walked on dry ground. They had to have faith and go into the sea. And then when they were almost completely submerged, then the waters parted. That's just one of the speculations. So I think it's very interesting in that it shows imanah, it shows complete faith to the point where you voluntarily give your entire life to Him. And when He knows that you completely trust Him, then the miracle happens. Just like with Abraham and his son Isaac, whereby he had to be completely trusting in Him. He had to show his faith. And then the miracle happens. It's just like in a court of law, right? If a person looks like he's going to commit a crime, let's say, the person maybe, is looking suspicious or doing anything like that, you cannot persecute that person for just looking suspicious. He has to actually commit the crime, even if the person is a known criminal or whatever the case is, or if he had intention, if he had complete intention of committing the crime, he cannot be persecuted if he doesn't actually commit the crime. So even with us, the Most High, He knows our hearts, He knows our faith. And by the way, it says He knows our hearts and our hearts are deceptively wicked. So as much as our intentions are good, we have to actually act it out. We have to act out our faith, because the word for faith in the Hebrew, in the Hebrew, is emunah. Emunah means to trust. So we need to completely trust in Him, just like the children of Yashar'al completely trusted in Him. In fact, some might argue that they didn't completely trust in Him, but the person leading them, Masha, completely trusted in the Most High, and therefore the miracle happened. So we need to be reminded today that we need to act out our faith. It doesn't If it's just in our minds and it's just in our hearts, then it is not faith. It is a false religious system that has been taught to us in Christianity or in any other false religion, that all you have to do is believe. If I say today is going to be a bright, sunshiny day, it's going to be scorching hot, but then I wear my biggest jacket and I wear the warmest clothes I have, then I don't really believe it's going to be hot. But if I act on that faith, on that belief that it's going to be hot, and I take an umbrella for the heat, and I wear cool clothes, like ventilated clothes, then my actions are showing my faith. They're showing my belief. That qualifies as actual imunah, as actual faith. And more importantly, with the parting of the Red Sea and this whole miracle happening, is that there's like a mikvah, it's like a spiritual mikvah, it's like a baptism, and that they are being immersed in the water, right? And they need to be cleansed of all spiritual uncleanness, which they got from Egypt, from Mitzrayim. Before their first big test, they need to be cleansed, they need to be clean, they need to be spiritually and ceremonially clean before their first big test, which we will get to. And then chapter 15, I will skip. It's the Song of Moses. I suggest that you read that in your own time. When you're studying this Parashat, this Torah portion, you can read carefully through chapter 15. I'm sure there's a lot to unpack there. But for the sake of time, I'll jump to chapter 16, right? Chapter 16, verse 1 till 3. It reads, "And they set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Yashar'al came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second new moon, after their going out of the land of Mitzrayim. And all the congregation of the children of Yashar'al grumbled against Moshe and Aharon in the wilderness. And the children of Yashar'al said to them, If only we had died by the hand of Adonai in the land of Mitzrayim, when we sat by the pots of meat, and when we ate bread to satisfaction. For you have brought us out into the wilderness to put all this assembly to death with hunger." Now, they were obviously complaining and grumbling for the delicacies of Mitzrayim, which speaks to us today that, we learn about kosher laws in Leviticus chapter 11, if I'm not mistaken, and the foods that are clean and unclean for us to eat. Now, many people, when they come into the faith, they fail that major test, actually. And as it's showing us now that, hunger and food, and not necessarily hunger, but the lust for delicacies is one of the big tests that people actually fail, when they are being transformed into this way. So we need to be reminded that, hey, delicacies are very temporary. It's things that, even when you start to exercise, when you start to take gym seriously, you have to give up delicacies. You have to give up hamburgers, certain unhealthy hamburgers. You have to give up donuts, ice cream, all these things, so that you can transform your body, so you can reach your target, right? But when it comes to the things of Adonai, we don't want to do that. So it just goes to show that our hearts are actually not ready in most cases. But if we are able to give up the delicacies, when we are shown that, hey, look, in the store, there is certain meats that are kosher, that are clean and unclean, right? Obviously, it goes deeper the more you study and the further you go into the journey. But at the basic level, there are clean animals and there are unclean animals. There are animals we are supposed to eat, there are those that we are not supposed to eat. And it's not negotiable. It's not a thing of, oh, he knows my heart, so I can eat an unclean food. We cannot eat unclean foods, period. So I would imagine that, in Mitzrayim, the animals were probably not even slaughtered correctly, they were probably sacrificed to idols, all these things. So they cannot keep lusting, because lust comes from a spiritual place before it becomes physical. Now, when we read chapter 16 from verse 19 up until verse 30, it speaks about the manna, that is coming from Shomaim, and they are told that on the sixth day, they are together twice as much. This is on verse 22. They are together twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one, and that all the rulers of the congregation came to and told Masha, right, and said to them, this is what Adonai has said. Tomorrow is a rest, is a Sabbath, right? Kodesh to Adonai. That which you bake and that which you cook and lay it for yourselves. All that is left over to keep until morning. So obviously, it is a Shabbat prep. We call it Shabbat prep. Whenever we prepare for the Shabbat, we are supposed to make a double portion for the next day. Now, what I really like about this passage is that it shows us that the Shabbat is one of the first major tests for any believer that is coming into this truth. Is one of the first major tests because it is the test of obedience. The first test is obedience. The second test is faith, complete imunah, complete trust. When Masha in chapter 17 struck the rock, right? And that was a show of imunah because it is a complete miracle that water would come out of a rock, right? So obviously from generation to generation, we have to trust in him, just like it says in the last verse of this Parashat, in verse 16 of chapter 17. And, in regards to the Sabbath is that, when it comes to the Sabbath, it is a major test because it is where now it is very difficult for us to let go of our routine, of our weekly routine that we are used to. It is very difficult to be left out of the world, to be left out when you see people having a good time on the Shabbat, because the rest of the world is out of covenant. So they do whatever they want on the Shabbat. They buy, they sell, they don't rest. Instead, they rest on SUN day, on the first day of the week. So the Shabbat is, in fact, it does say in scripture that the Shabbat is a sign of the covenant, just like with circumcision is a sign of the covenant. So the Shabbat is very important, and which is why I believe it was one of the first major tests, and it was very important, for them to trust in Adonai that he will provide for you, even on the Shabbat, that the manna will be there, guys. Even if it rots, after one day, on the Shabbat will make it to not rot. After that one day, there will be a double portion, that even until the next day in the morning, when it's still the Sabbath, you will continue to have food up until the evening, and that you'll be fine. Your sustenance will be taken care of, especially when you obey his commandments, right? And obviously the Shabbat is a weekly appointment that continually reminds us that you are people of the covenant. You are in covenant, drop everything, and, even your daily work, because when they gather the manna, it's like work in a way. So it's signifying to us that our everyday work is not our calling. Our calling is in him, in waking up the lost sheep, especially for us, the true Hebrews, the true children of Yashar'al. Our assignment is to wake up the lost sheep, not just to work and to accumulate wealth and to be satisfied and to show off to other people that, hey, look, we have it all together. No, our assignment to wake others up and to encourage each other. Now, I want to get into the Hebraic significance, and then we will close this parasha of, Masha striking the rock in chapter 17, from verse 2 till 7, when they complain about water, and then Masha is told to strike the rock and water will come out. Now, the one we all know, the comparison we all know is that the rock is Yahushua or Yahusha, in that when he was on the stake, they, stabbed him with a spear and water came out just like the rock in the wilderness. But something very interesting in the Hebrew is that, the word for father in Hebrew is Av. It's Aleph Beit, right? Or Ab in other pronunciations. And then the word for son is Ban or Ben in other pronunciation, which is Beit Nun or Beit Nun Sofit, right? And when you put them together, actually, when you put those words together, father and son, Av and Ban, it spells the word Aban, which in Hebrew means stone. So literally in the Hebrew, the word father and the word son, when you put them together, they spell the word stone. Now Yahusha said, I am in the Father and the Father is in me. I and the Father are one. They're in unity. When we palal, when we do the Shema, we say Adonai Elohenu, Adonai Echad. Adonai is one. Adonai is in unity. He's in perfect unity. So everything that he does, his instructions are in perfect unity. There is no mistake anywhere. There is no error in any way. That's how we know we can completely trust in him. From generation to generation, we completely trust in him and we show our obedience. We show our trust in him. We show our faith. And we take on all these things that we say you must do. We keep the Shabbat. We eat clean foods. We are kind to our neighbors. We do not charge interest to a fellow Yahudim. And in that, he is showing us that actually, you, as much as I and the Father are one, the Messiah, is one with the Father. Even us, we are a vine to the Messiah. So we must be one. We must be in perfect unity with him, with his instructions, and with everything that he sets us out to do. And we take on our assignment. We take on our assignment with reverence, with fear. And, we show no favor to the world. And whatever it is we do, that we know that we do it for him. And that he will always be with us throughout. With that, guys, I would like to close this week's Torah portion. I hope you've been edified and barach. Until the next time, shalom.